globally acclaimed photographer Misan Harriman was born in Nigeria by Nigerian parents. Today, he enjoys the singular distinction of being the first black photographer to shoot a British Vogue September cover in the magazine's 104-year history, and the first black male ever to shoot a cover for British Vogue. Harriman said he was honored to shoot the cover during the biggest civil rights movement in modern history at the peak of the Black Lives Matter movement. In the wake of this accomplishment, he has been interviewed by Sky News as well as Christina Mampo for CNN. The man himself will now join us on Arise News from the United Kingdom to share his story with our esteemed viewers. Mr. Harriman, good morning. Welcome to the morning show on the Arise News channel.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation. But for the benefit of our viewers, Nigerians in particular, who are excited that we have a Misan Harriman who is making history, who is representing Nigeria well, and who is emerging as a symbol of inspiration for many younger Nigerians. I'd like you to just tell us your story, your background. The Harriman name is a very popular name in Nigeria. Which of the Harrimans is yours? And, you know, your growing up years, how you ended up in England, your connection with your Nigerian roots, and how you just decided to take up photography, and how you have managed to take it to this level where you are now globally acclaimed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Misan Harriman. As you know, my father is the late Chief Hope Harriman.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and one of the greatest gifts he gave me, obviously, like many fathers, was education. So just like the rest of my brothers and sisters, I was sent at a young age to school in England. Yeah, over those years, I really got into film, arts, culture, more as a hobby. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I picked up a camera and I decided to really follow my own dream. After my wife said, listen, you talk so much about other people creating, why don't you create? And she gave me the belief, self-belief in myself to try and photograph people, do portraiture. What happened is that during the recent Black Lives Matter protests, my images became shared globally. Everyone from Martin Luther King's son himself to people like the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, the racing driver, Lewis Hamilton, were using my images to make a statement about the anti-racist movement. And the editor-in-chief of British Vogue, Mr. Edward Enninful, came across my images and felt that my lens, the style of photography that I do, that's very honest, very raw, was the perfect style
loud and clear
for this historic British Vogue activism cover.
Hello, Misan. Are you still with us? Yeah, yes. I'd asked you about, you know, a reflection on your connection with Nigeria, growing up in Nigeria, and then your relocation to the United Kingdom, and how that mix has influenced your art and work and career.
I wouldn't even say it's a mix. I mean, we were raised to embrace our culture. So whether I was in Lagos or in the schools I was in England, my mother was very, very clear on who we are and where we come from. And every single holiday, we would be back home in Lagos or spending time in Warri or Sapele. I'm Ishekiri, as you know. Yeah. So I never lost touch with my own identity, which has played a very strong role in what I'm doing today. If I got lost in trying to fit in and be the same as others, I would never have had this sense of self-belief that has taken me to this place today. Even on the shoot, that I did with British Vogue, I brought a young black photographer, Ron Timehin, to do the shoot with me as well, because I believe it's very important to lift others up. The sense of identity that is coming out in the interviews that I'm doing today comes from the education and upbringing I've had from my family life, my formative years, time in Nigeria, every holiday, and just knowing who I am and where I come from.
Well, before we come to talk about the shoots proper, let me take you back to the protest, the Black Lives Matter, because from your reaction, you seemed very surprised at the extent at which, you know, the pictures were shared globally. But what were you hoping to capture at that protest?
You know, the truth is, we all saw the George Floyd video. We were all horrified. And I was like, what can I do? You know, I'm one person. What can I do? And, you know, I have this ability to take pictures. Let me just go. And when I arrived there, initially there were 50 people. This is the first big march. And I was like, okay, this is nice. You never know how many people turn up to these things. 1 hour later, there were thousands of people. And I realized that this is going to be part of history. So I just started taking the pictures. And I strongly believe when one black person is shooting another, because we have the same lived experience, there is some kind of trust. And that's why my pictures show a very strong emotional reaction from the subject and the people that look at it, because there was a sense of trust when they saw someone that looks like me in the protest holding the camera, taking the pictures. I believe that's a big difference. But what I never expected was when I posted them online on Instagram, for it to have the viral reach that it did.
All right, Misa, let me go down very local. Let me call you your full name, Enyi Misa.
Yes.
That's the proper Sheke name, as they call it. I mean,
Yes.
you've done a lot. You took the portrait for Princess Beatrice, and you did something that's quite stunning. I mean, Tunu just sent me this now. You wore trad, proper Niger trad, you know, to the royal wedding. It was only the BBC that picked that up. I mean, what instills that sense of, you know, identity, you know, in you that you take around with you when you tell that story? Because, I mean, look at the people you took, you did a Photoshop with, a young Marcus Rashford that he didn't have to do much. He just took a pen and a paper and he wrote a letter and he said, please, don't cut that lunch in schools in the UK. It means a lot to me. My mother had nothing when we were growing up, and that lunch was a very integral part of my growing up. I mean, what aroused that identity, Enyimisa?
I think a big part of it is how we are as a people. No one is going to make me feel that our country and our culture is any less than any other place that I've ever traveled or seen in my life. No one can tell me that the food that I love to whack is any less, any less sophisticated or any less delicious than any sushi or Chinese that I've eaten over the years. And that's just a sense of, you know, my family making sure that I didn't get it twisted. You know, they didn't send me to England to become something that inherently I'm not. And so, of course, if I'm invited to a big event like a royal wedding, there was no question in my mind that I'll be wearing anything but traditional formal wear from our country. Just like I wore when I had the interview with the great Christiane Amanpour, who of course commented on how she loves our style of dressing. So to me, it's part of, why wouldn't I? I mean, it would be more surprising if I was dressed in any other way for such a big event.
Race was a major item in the George Floyd protest that we saw across the world. Race, particularly with regard to identity and also with regard to institutional racism. But in the interview you granted Evening Standard, you said that your messages your images are about hope. Now, are you really optimistic that someday we'll be able to beat the challenge of racism? And have you yourself, at any point, experienced institutional racism? And if so, is your photography some kind of protest?
I believe that the mere fact that somebody that looks like me, that is taking the level of people and imagery that I am, is a living, breathing piece of activism. In terms of hope, which of course is my middle name and my late father's first name, I will remain hopeful. I feel that I've been put on this earth to bring hope to those that do not have a voice. I am here to let them know they matter. And I'll tell you why I believe that we can be hopeful. Because this thing called the internet has made so many people, whether they are white or black, realize that they are not alone in their views against racism. Generations before, people in their 50s and 60s and older would never have been able to realize that they had a collective of like-minded people. And that's been the huge difference. I've been at what I call the tip of the spear of the anti-racist movement. And when you see young people that do not believe the history they were taught at school, that are going online and learning about what actually happened with the English colonial system, when they're properly learning about the civil rights history of North America, you realize that we're not going back. We're only moving forward. And there are more of us that are for change than are against it. And that's why I'm hopeful.
But let me narrow this down to the fashion industry, because the likes of Vogue and other top fashion magazines have been seen as institutionally white. And, do you sense a change? Because this is coming 104 years after. That's after a century that this change has come. But do you sense that this will last, or is just a moment in time? And what was it like to work with another black man who also broke that barrier, who is the editor-in-chief at Vogue?
British Vogue.
British Vogue.
Let me just start by saying this man, Edward Enninful, is no joke. And it is an example for all of us to understand that it is one thing to have power. There are plenty of people in this world that are at the top of their game in leadership positions, but it's another thing to empower others, like the way he has empowered me. Edward has only been at British Vogue for 3 years, and look at what he's done. From 2 months ago, having all the care workers on the front cover. This man had postmen, doctors, people, key workers that have been risking their lives during the COVID crisis. And then he decided to pick me, someone that was not a known fashion photographer, which shows what you can do if you wield power correctly. So whilst he is at the helm, and you have to understand, he is the most powerful man in the fashion industry globally. A Ghanaian man is the most powerful man in the fashion industry globally, and he is using his influence to make sure there will be a diverse and inclusive industry in fashion. And that's not just me taking photographs. That's making sure that the team at British Vogue, everyone I worked with was from a diverse background. And this will be a trickle-down effect. And what you'll see is other magazines will follow or copy, whichever way you want to call it. And then the industry itself, from clothes designers, shoe brands, the whole industry as a whole will have to follow. One thing, when they see something that is on every news channel, industry will take change. And that's due to the leadership of one man, Edward Enninful. I have to say that statement.
Right, Musa, we'll take a brief break. We'll come back to you. I will keep the conversation alive. We'll be right back to the Arise News channel. Well, welcome back. It's still the Arise News channel. We've got Misan Harriman, Nigerian-born photographer, and he's done the honors of being the first black person to take this summer edition of British Vogue catalog, and it's just done something very inspiring. I mean, I'm just still very excited about what you have done and what you have achieved. I want to ask about the kind of stories that you'll be open to telling from now, because every photographer with that lens tells a story. No matter who they are in the world, be it a Patrick Dimoncher or any other top photographer, tells a story. So what kind of story would you be telling from now? Is it going to be about story of hope, the black plight, or even indigenous stories about things happening in Nigeria? And I know your lens is ready. So what's going to be that story trend?
I'm trying to follow in the footsteps of one of my idols, Gordon Parks, who was the greatest African-American photographer. And what he did is he captured imagery from the civil rights protests of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and then he was also doing a lot of high fashion photography. So my lens is going to capture the full spectrum of the human condition. And I'm looking forward to coming to Nigeria and spending time there, telling the stories of people that need to be heard from my country in a positive but honest manner. So, you know, when this pandemic allows us to move freely, I certainly will be coming to Nigeria with my camera and looking for extraordinary people whose voice needs to be heard. I wanted to let you know that.
That's amazing.
Well, Misan, what else do you do apart from photography? Because you said you got into photography only 3 years ago. So what else do you do apart from being a professional photographer, a husband, a father? And I asked you earlier, how did you come into photography? Did you go for formal training, or this was just a hobby that became a big thing?
Okay, so firstly, I wear two hats. My main hat is I'm the owner of a digital publishing business called What We See. And that was set up when I realized that the quality of content in the internet was not necessarily of the highest standard. And I wanted to build websites and Facebook and Instagram pages of very high quality music, photography, cultural stories, because I believe content is very important to your mental health. And if you're just consuming rubbish, it's not good for you. So I set that up, and it reaches over 1 billion people a year with 28 brands within that company. In terms of photography, I'm very dyslexic, and I struggled very much with traditional classrooms. So I found it very easy to do online tutorials with YouTube. So I'm completely self-taught, and I learned this only 3 years ago, which I want that to be a lesson to anyone that's listening, that you can pick up a new skill set and you never know where it will take you. So just try. You know, if you want to try photography, get a camera, any camera, even the camera on your phone, and keep shooting. Learn about light and composition, and you never know where that will go. I wanted to make that statement. I have only been doing photography for 3 years.
Well, the propelling force behind this was your wife. And you said, you know, she asked you, why talk so much? Why not just walk the talk and get a camera and do this? What was her reaction when you got this call from the British Vogue to do this shoot? And secondly, what was the most difficult part for you to work with black models and capture them for an essentially white magazine?
The truth is, with my wife, and I think this is the same for many partners globally, she's believed in me more than I believed in myself. I suffer from something called Imposter Syndrome, where I will think, at least for a brief moment, that, am I good enough? Should I just drop everything? I don't know if I should do this. And she's like, listen, they're lucky to have you. Just do what you do. So that sense of self-belief from her gave me the strength to really try something new at a reasonably late stage in my professional trajectory. In terms of photographing black people, we know ourselves. So, of course, Adwa and Marcus, as soon as they saw that it's a black photographer with a black team, everyone was very casual, very comfortable. And you can even see in the look, especially from Marcus, that he's like, yeah, I got this, man. My brother's shooting me. He's not going to do any rubbish. I know he knows how to make our skin look good, and he's not going to embarrass me. He's not going to try and do anything that would hurt the message that I'm trying to give. And that's the important thing about having a seat at the table, because there's so many nuances about race that is an unspoken thing that we just understand. I didn't have to say anything to Marcus. He saw me, said, okay, all right, it's one of us. And that was a very important thing to have on that shoot.
I want to go deeper. How was it like working with Marcus Rashford, Manchester United football star? How's it like working with everybody in there? What were those little, you know, when you watch a movie, you see some part go inaudible conversation. What was those inaudible conversations like?
This young man is, again, you asked me earlier about hope. When you meet people like this, you realize that we can be hopeful. Marcus is a millionaire many times over. He is a superstar football player who does not need to spend any extra time trying to fight for the rights of children that cannot afford to eat. But because he lived that experience himself, I don't know if you know, but he was one of those children that needed support to have school lunches. So he knows what that means, to be hungry at school. And to see someone that, I think he's 22, to use his platform to make the British government change its policy, the fastest change of policy ever, is just extraordinary. And, I photographed him in his garden. We had a good conversation. And, he's a young man that is aware of the privilege he has as an international football star, and he's using it. And this is a lesson to so many other musicians, athletes, that will be talking about how much money they have, showing their watches, showing their cars. What's the point of that? Use the great privilege you have to force change. And I hope Marcus is an example to so many other people that have a big platform. I was very impressed by him, very impressed.
Well, quickly, Misan, we'll be wrapping this up in a matter of just a few minutes. But, what's your word for young Nigerians who are children of privilege like you and who also need to follow their own dreams? You're a silver spoon, definitely. Every Nigerian will say so. But you've been able to carve your own path. What do you have to say for young people, to young people?
My message to all the young people is this: do not be afraid to take the road less traveled. If you have a phone in your hand, that means you have a potential audience of billions. So keep creating. Whether you're a podcaster, a video creator, a photographer, do not be afraid to take that road and keep trying. Failure is just a small bump on the road to success. And I'm an example of that. And honestly, I'm the first of many. So just keep doing it.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Harriman. We wish you all the best. And Nigeria is very proud of you. And we're all excited that you've given us this opportunity this morning to have a conversation with you.